Hello, upper cervical doctors and students. Welcome back to the UCM podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bill Davis, founder and CEO of UCM Practice Growth Systems. Very excited to be with you once again. Got a great topic today that is going to be very impactful for you, no matter where you are in your chiropractic practice career. This is a career reality check. This episode today is the lie chiropractors are told about success. I want to help you to rethink ownership, association, and a career path that actually leads to fulfillment, because success in upper cervical chiropractic doesn't look the same for everyone. And so let's get right into it. So what if the version of success you've been chasing isn't actually yours? What if you've been told that this is the way to be successful in chiropractic, but it isn't actually how you have been designed to be successful or to thrive in chiropractic practice? The script that most chiropractic students are handed is, from day one, you need to own your own practice, be your own boss. It's, framed as the natural finish line, the goal every serious chiropractor should be working towards. Owning your own practice, being your own boss, that's the goal. But ownership is not the only legitimate path to a meaningful chiropractic career. And there are many people who go into owning a practice who struggle for years or decades because they're just not wired for that role. The lie stated plainly is this: that there's only one way to succeed in chiropractic, and that's owning your own practice. That is just not true. There is many doctors in this profession that have built incredible careers by being long-term associates in a practice system that they love. And it's unfortunate that this is so prevalent within chiropractic. This is everywhere. It starts in school hallways and at conferences and mentorship conversations. And, it sounds like wisdom and passed down with confidence, but for a large portion of chiropractors, this script doesn't lead to fulfillment. All it does lead to is frustration and debt and burnout. And so why is this lie so easy to believe? The ownership narrative doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like, inspiration. It's tapping into these deeply American values of independence and entrepreneurship, and it's reinforced in nearly every turn in chiropractic culture. And this idea of independence being attractive, to be in charge of your schedule and your patients and all this. And ownership feels like control. Owning a practice can feel like the ultimate form of professional security. And the schools, as I said, reinforce it. The chiropractic education that's centered around business training, which is very limited, but it is focused mostly around ownership, implying that that's the default destination. And most of the success stories we hear are usually owners, right? I mean, we have had some great long-term associates on this podcast over the years, but there are definitely more chiropractors that are celebrated on stages and in podcasts who are practice owners, which skews the perception of what is possible. The real cost of one-size-fits-all thinking, though, is when an entire profession is funneled towards a single definition of success, the consequences can be very damaging. This pressure to own a practice doesn't just affect finances, it can shape identity and relationships and your long-term well-being. You can get in this place where you are in financial pressure because of taking on significant debt and overhead before you're ready, or before you're wired for it, because you're not wired for it. You can get in a place of constant comparison where you're measuring yourself against peers who seem to be further along the ownership track. You can make poor fit decisions, choosing a career structure that doesn't match your personality, values, or goals. And this can lead to burnout. We've seen many doctors over the years who are 10, 15, 20 years into practice who have struggled all of those years at owning a practice and seeing it grow. And many times it's because they made a decision at the beginning that was not a good fit for them. And no matter how much training they get and how much help and support they get, they never get to that place where they're really thriving in practice. All they are ever doing is surviving, and that can lead to burnout. But there is another way. The truth the profession doesn't always tell you is that there are multiple paths. There isn't just one road to a fulfilling chiropractic career. The right path for you isn't determined by, what everybody thinks you should do or peer pressure or what looks impressive on social media. It's determined by how you're wired, your personality, your risk tolerance, your values, and the kind of life you want to build. When your career structure aligns with who you are, you don't just survive in chiropractic, you can thrive. So there's two primary career paths in chiropractic. Both are legitimate. Both can generate strong income and deep impact. The key is knowing which one fits you. So if you are a student or a recent graduate, I encourage you to really think this through before you make these decisions, these decisions that are in those first 5 years of chiropractic practice are so important. That's why we wrote a book on that. Your first 5 years in chiropractic, that is really, really important for you. If you're in that place, you can grab the book over at the website, ucmgrow.com, your first 5 years as a chiropractor. But there's two primary paths that you can take. One is the path of practice owner, right? Build and lead your own clinic, set the vision, hire the team, create the culture, own the results for better or worse. Path two is a long-term associate doctor or a career associate doctor. Deliver exceptional patient care within an established practice, focus on clinical excellence, while someone else handles operations and overhead. Both paths can lead to impact, income, and fulfillment. The question is which one leads to your version of all three. So let's look at both these paths. Path number one is the practice owner. What ownership actually demands. Let's take a look at this, right? The vision of ownership can be compelling, but the reality requires a specific kind of person. Before committing, make sure you're going in with your eyes wide open. Number one is financial risk. Startup costs, equipment, payroll obligations, and months, sometimes even years before profitability or consistent profitability. The risk is real and it's personal, and it is something that you have to really consider before you go into owning your own practice. Leadership responsibility. When you own a practice, you are a leader. You're the boss. Your team's livelihood depends on your decisions. Leadership isn't optional. It's actually the job. And so if you don't enjoy leading, if that's not what you enjoy doing, then ownership may not be a good path for you. Team management is another big piece of being a practice owner. Being able to hire and train and fire when you need to, and build culture and inspire others. These demand time and emotional energy that has nothing to do with, adjusting spines and taking care of patients. And then being responsible for marketing and growth, the growth of the practice. New patients don't just show up automatically. You need to invest in visibility and community presence and consistent outreach. This is part of the role of a practice owner. So these four things are really important to consider when considering practice ownership. And then just understanding that there are a specific type of person that tends to thrive as a practice owner. What we've seen over the years is someone who is a visionary, someone that sees the big picture, thinks years ahead, and they're excited about possibility, tends to be really good at running their own practice. Someone that has a high risk tolerance, right? They're comfortable with uncertainty. They're not paralyzed by financial pressure. If you are really struggle with uncertainty, then owning a practice may not be best for you. They are leadership driven, meaning that they're energized by building a team, by developing people, by creating culture. They have that type of a mindset. And then they have a builder's mindset as well, where they enjoy creating systems, scaling processes, growing from the ground up. These are some of the characteristics that we've seen that are very common in successful practice owners: visionary, high risk tolerance, leadership driven, builder mind, and a builder mindset. If you hear this list and you feel energized rather than anxious, then ownership may be your path. But if it feels like a checklist of things you'd rather avoid, keep listening. Because there is another way to be successful in chiropractic, and that's the vision of a career associateship or a long-term associate position. In a long-term associate position, typically what you will do in that position is you'll focus on patient care. Your energy will go directly towards clinical outcomes. You don't need to do any owner stuff, mostly just taking care of patients. You have less operational burden, right? Someone else manages the lease. If the toilet's not working, you don't have to deal with that. The owner does, right? The front desk, the billing systems, the business growth. You just show up, you deliver care, you're a valued team member. You tend to have stable, predictable income, a consistent paycheck. When you contribute to a system that works, you can count on consistent pay and growth opportunities. And that built-in team environment tends to be there, right? If you're an associate, that means there's at least 2 doctors in the practice, and there's generally multiple CAs, and you get that opportunity to have collaborative team building, mentorship, camaraderie with colleagues without carrying the weight of building the team yourself from scratch. There are trade-offs with being an associate. Just as ownership demands honest self-assessment, so does long-term associateship. The benefits are real, but so are some of the limitations. Knowing them in advance helps you negotiate smarter and choose better environments. One is that you are going to have less direct control, right? If that's a big problem for you, then it may be not the best path for you. But if you're okay with, being in a collaborative environment where you're not the ultimate decision maker when it comes to clinical protocols or scheduling or business decisions, that you have to be okay with that. If you struggle with those things, then tension is going to be inevitable. You may have a potential income ceiling in an associate position, depending on the practice. In some compensation models, your earning potential is capped. Equity and wealth building require different structures and negotiations. So those are some things to be thinking about on the front end if you're going into these types of situations as a long-term associate. And another big piece is understand that leadership quality matters a lot. Your success as a long-term associate is directly tied to the integrity and competence of the practice owner who you are working with. A poor fit owner is a serious problem. And then also your clinic fit is non-negotiable. The culture, the values, and patient philosophy of the clinic, they need to align with yours. Settling for the wrong environment erodes your passion quickly. And so those are some things to keep in mind. And what we've seen, who thrives as a long-term associate or a career associate are people who are clinically driven. If you are energized by patient healing and adjusting outcomes, that is one of the best ways that you can do that is if you can focus on, every upper cervical chiropractor is energized by bringing hope and healing to sick and suffering people that I've ever met. But if that's, your primary driver and you don't really want to deal with any of the business stuff, you just really, really want to take care of patients, then a long-term associate, it may be your right path. And if you're really a team-oriented person, right, you thrive in collaborative, strong team culture environments, that also helps you thrive in that kind of a position. And your value stability. If you prefer consistent income, predictable structure, sometimes people who are going to have life events in the future that they recognize are coming, such as women who want to have babies. A long-term associate position can provide more stability, more flexibility in those kind of circumstances. There's a variety of different circumstances, though, that it may be a good fit for you to be a long-term associate. And again, if you're just not that interested in the business aspects of practice, then long-term associate position can be the place where you can really thrive and you can just focus on taking care of patients and leave operations to others. And so the biggest career mistake that you can make is choosing your career path for the wrong reasons. It's a trap that's easy to fall into and expensive to climb out of. So trying to make these decisions early on is important, but it is also important to make a decision when you realize that it's not working, right? When you realize that you've been in practice for 10 years, 15 years, whatever, and you consistently are just banging your head against the wall because you're not growing your practice, and you've gotten lots of help and you've done lots of things and it just isn't happening, then a long-term associate position may be your answer. And so thinking about that is really important. And don't let ego keep you in a place where you are not going to thrive. If you have this owners are more successful story in your mind, it's just not true. It's not a fact. You don't want to let pride drive your decision making. Peer pressure is also another thing that you want to not allow to control you. What your classmates are doing is irrelevant. What your colleagues are doing is irrelevant if it's not right for you. Comparison can be a career killer. It's also, if you're in school now or you're coming out of school, it's not what your school tells you. Your institution has a curriculum, not a crystal ball. Their assumptions may not reflect your reality. And also looking at what looks good online. Social media highlights ownership wins, but it hides sleepless nights and debt stress and doesn't highlight associate success stories. So here's a better framework for your decision making. Instead of asking, what should I do? Ask, who am I and what do I actually want? When you anchor your career choice in self-knowledge, self-awareness, the path forward can become much clearer and more sustainable. What are your strengths? Are you a natural builder and leader, or do you excel when you can go deep clinically? Be brutally honest. Both are valuable. You just need to know who you are. What about your calling? What drew you to chiropractic, the craft of taking care of people, healing, hope, bringing hope and healing to sick and suffering people? Is it that, or is it the challenge of building something, of building a business, building a practice, making an impact in your community? Your origin story can be a clue into how you're wired. Your desired lifestyle is another thing to really consider when making this type of a decision. How much risk, responsibility, and variability can you carry and still thrive? What does your ideal week look like? Thinking about that can help you to get a good picture of which one of these paths is best for you. And then thinking about your long-term vision. Where do you want to be in 10 years, in 20 years? You want to work backward from that destination, not forward from someone else's expectations. So the real definition of success in upper cervical chiropractic, it's not about ownership, the size of your clinic, the number of associates you employ, or whether your name is on the door. None of that defines your success. It's about alignment. Success is when your career structure matches your strengths, your values, your lifestyle, and your sense of purpose. When these four things align, you show up better for your patients, your family, and yourself, regardless of which path you're on. The most successful upper cervical chiropractors aren't the ones who followed the script. They're the ones who rewrote it for themselves. And so what is your next step? Your next step starts with one question. What does success actually look like for me? not for your professors or your classmates or your colleagues or the chiropractor with 10,000 Instagram followers, but for you. Get honest with yourself. Reflect on your strengths, your risk tolerance, the lifestyle you want to build before committing to a path, and explore both paths intentionally. Shadow owners, talk with long-term associates, ask real questions about income, stress, fulfillment, and regret. Choose alignment over appearance. Pick the structure that fits your wiring, not the one that looks most impressive or you think most impressive. That's where the real success lives, is getting aligned with who you are as a person and how you have been designed to be successful within upper cervical chiropractic. You were called to chiropractic for a reason, doc. You want to build the career that honors that calling on your terms, not on anyone else's. And if you want help, if you want to find your path and you want to have someone walk through it with you and help you in this, we would love to have a conversation with you. You can visit us over at ucmgrow.com, schedule a free career planning call with us. We'll help you get clear on which path fits your strengths, your goals, and the life you want to build. And whichever direction you go in, there's ways that we can help you. And so thank you so much for being with us again today. We appreciate you and all of you out there. And as we always say around here, go Team Upper Cervical.